It all begins with a news report of how the community is outraged after convicted criminal Dr. Light has once again escaped incarceration. One TV news anchor voices his opinions on how the law should have criminals expunged should they commit a felony. Luckily, Superman shows up to stop him and returns him to the authorities. In other news, tensions between Bialya and Pokolistan have reached new heights after Bialya disregarded the UN sanctions and pushed into settlements across the border. In Metropolis, Clark Kent, aka Superman, takes Lois Lane downtown for lunch when they come across Superman's inspired cartoon. Lois worries that the studio is making profits from Superman's kindness. Clark assures her that the cartoon's proceeds directly go to a charity he supervises. When Clark is about to kiss Lois, an explosion goes off from a distance, and the citizens flee in panic. They later discover Atomic Skull is attacking civilians to lure out Superman. Superman arrives and defeats Atomic Skull only after losing several people in the attack. Before he took him out, Atomic Skull managed to grab hold of Superman and attacked him directly with his radiation. In response, Superman shouts at him to let go, which causes the windows on the buildings to break from the shockwave. Superman punches him so hard that it sends Atomic Skull to the bottom of the lake in the center of the city. The heat from his radiation caused the lake to dry up. With Atomic Skull knocked out, Superman brings him to the authorities to be detained. Later that night, a group of mysterious superpowered individuals makes its way to Metropolis. It turns out that they are looking for Superman after seeing him on the TV taking out criminals. The next day, Superman stands before the United Nations, where he is scrutinized over the property damage and people lost in the last attack. They question him and wonder why he did not kill Atomic Skull when he had the chance. Superman explains that he is not a judge, jury, or executioner. Although he could take him out, he claims his powers do not put him above the law. When asked why not use his powers to fix the world, Superman responds that the world is not broken and needs fixing. He firmly believes that people, at their core, are good. He claims that humanity has limitless potential for good, and his purpose has been to help draw out and reach that potential. While trying to explain the folly of lawless violence and the greater good within everyone, his speech was rudely interrupted when the leaders of Bialya and Pokolistan started arguing, which Superman took as his cue to exit. Superman flies off to Tamarev, the capital of the Eastern Bloc nation of Bialya, where the fighting has escalated. Diplomatic efforts between the neighboring countries collapsed. It has been known that both countries have access to considerable technology and fears that weapons of mass destruction could come into play. Out of nowhere, a monster shows up and wipes out the opposing faction. Superman arrives to help, but the elite have beaten him to it. Coldcast has taken out one of the monsters with its powers, while Menagerie used its demonic beasts to take down the other one. When they thought it was over, the monster regenerated and split into two. Superman tried to knock it out with strength, but it was ineffective, and he got punched into a building. When Superman stood back up, raring to go at it again, Manchester Black telepathically told him that the monster didn't have a brain. Superman attacks with his super breath to freeze it and shatters it into pieces with a single punch. Meanwhile, Hat summons a giant dragon to swallow the other one whole and returns to his hat while the monster is still inside it. With the monsters defeated, Superman confronts the elite and advises them to be mindful of collateral damage. Superman thanks them for their help, but they prematurely disappear on him when he is about to get to know them. The elite has made a big impression on the people from the last battle. At Metropolis, Clark writes an article on the elite for the Daily Planet. Perry White, his boss at the Daily Planet, was impressed by his article that he made Clark the lead investigator on the elite. Lois later informs them that a woman in England claims to have known the mysterious elite. Superman and Lois fly to England to confirm the rumors when Manchester sneaks up from behind him and leads Superman outside the city to talk. Manchester later introduces the rest of the team to Superman. The elite consists of Manchester Black, a British telepath and a powerful telekinetic. Coldcast can emit massive amounts of electrical energy, while Menagerie has symbiotically bonded with several demonic-looking beasts, which she uses in her attacks. Hat is a mysterious magician whose abilities are centered around his fedora. With Superman's permission, Manchester showed him a glimpse of his past and how he came to be using his telepathic powers. Manchester grew up in a slum and explained that he was the unplanned fifth child of 5 boys. He was left to fend for himself after his mother died, giving birth to his baby sister, Vera. Forced by their situation, Vera uses her innocent looks to trick people into feeling sorry for her, while Manchester sneaks up on unsuspecting couples and steals from them. While they revel from a big haul, Manchester suddenly gets an unbearable headache. The cops finally catch up to them, so Vera throws rocks at the police officers to keep them away. They eventually got close to her, but she broke away and fell onto the rails with an oncoming train. With a strong resolve to save Vera, Manchester awakens to his powers and saves her. Having witnessed an incredible show of strength, he was recruited to the Secret Service, where he later met with the others on tour to Africa and has been inseparable since then. Superman and the elite later learned of a subway train trapped underwater due to a terrorist attack. They arrive at the scene to help, but when Manchester hesitates and starts questioning his abilities, Superman persuades him to go past his limits. Superman dove into the water and separated the tunnel from the ground, and with Manchester's help, they lifted the tunnel to the surface. Hat then used his powers to summon a creature to freeze the water so they could lay it on the ice. Meanwhile, Coldcast and Menagerie found the terrorists responsible. When they wouldn't speak up, Manchester used his powers to torture them until blood came out of their eyes. Superman stopped him, telling him that this is not how they do things. Later that night, Lois is furious after seeing Menagerie kiss Superman on live TV. Clark explained that it was a spur-of-the-moment thing and that he didn't kiss her back. Lois was checking on Manchester's story, and it doesn't seem to check out. There weren't even records of his sister ever existing. While digging deeper into it, a sudden broadcast was shown worldwide. Manchester calls out to all petty dictators and corrupt officials and explains that his group, the Elite, is unbound to any law and will deal with crime to the full extent of their abilities. After the Elite's broadcast, the citizens were split into 2, one in favor of the Elite's way and the other against it. Superman travels back to Bialya when Coldcast's flash wave inadvertently hits him en route, significantly weakening him. Superman falls to the ground and causes an explosion when he crashes on top of a truck. Superman is later surrounded by Pokolistani soldiers who intend to take him out when the Elites suddenly show up to save him. The Elites take back the unconscious Superman to their base, a sentient macroorganism named Bunny. Superman later wakes up attached with solar energy drips to help him recover. Coldcast apologizes for taking him out with the neutrino pulse, which acts like an EMP that stops the electrons from flowing for over a second. Manchester gives Superman a tour of their base. He claims it is the biggest silicone-based bacteria colony in the universe that hides between dimensions, making it challenging to track. Superman confronts Manchester for killing the Pokolistani soldiers. He explains that they can't kill people and call themselves heroes. Manchester claims that someone had to do something, and that when dealing with the villains, they make sure they stay down. Superman tries to reason with him and explains that they are not above the law. Superman's attempt to convince the Elite that killing is unnecessary falls upon deaf ears. He was suddenly teleported back to Earth when he tried to force it on them. Lois continues her relentless investigation into Manchester's past and finds herself being escorted out by MI5 agents who do not confirm or deny knowing him. When she thought she had reached the end of the road, Lois met Vera in the alley. She gives Lois the file on Manchester, claiming that the world needs to know who they're dealing with. When asked about her motives, she explains that although her brother is misguided and angry, he still saved her life, and she hopes this would help save him. Atomic Skull breaks out of prison and starts rampaging in Metropolis. The elite showed up to deal with him, but struggled to handle them on their own. Coldcast got taken out by surprise, and Menagerie's attacks were ineffective. Manchester tried to confront Atomic Skull by himself, but his power quickly overwhelmed him. Superman arrives and coordinates an attack with the elite, allowing them to emerge victorious. With Atomic Skull neutralized, Superman intends to return him to Stryker's Island, but Manchester suggests otherwise. Seeing the aftermath of the attack and the lives lost, the people look up to the elite to kill Atomic Skull. Superman tried to stop the execution, but was a second too late. With Atomic Skull dead, the people rejoice, and the elite returns to their base, leaving Superman to clean up after their mess. After a public execution of a criminal, the people are slowly being won over by the elite. Superman starts to doubt himself and questions whether his principles are still worth fighting for. As he contemplates in his fortress of solitude, Lois calls Superman to inform him of what she found from Vera. She tried to run a story on it, but British intelligence quickly shut them down before they could print it. They suddenly received interference when the elite showed up. Manchester tells him he used to love superheroes growing up, but now Superman has become a cliché and claims he doesn't fit in anymore. He claims that Superman can deal with petty criminals, but the real work of fixing the world belongs to them, starting with Bialya. Superman tried to catch Manchester but was teleported back to their base. A fleet of Bialyan fighter jets is headed towards Pokolistan to level the city to the ground when Superman arrives to stop them. Manchester and Hat show up to compliment Superman's efforts to stop the raid. When asked what is next, Superman claims he will get both leaders of Bialya and Pokolistan to sit down and talk in a neutral location. Manchester claims he is a bit late as both are already dead because of Coldcast and Menagerie. Still in shock, Superman charged at Manchester with the rest of the world watching. Manchester sees Superman's actions as a declaration of war against the elite and challenges him to a duel. At dawn, Superman confronts the elite. He agrees to fight them but away from the civilian populace. Manchester claims he will be streaming their fight for the world to see. They were then teleported to the dark side of the moon for the final battle. Superman makes one last attempt to convince the elite to surrender, but Manchester sends him flying with his powers. Although Superman withstood attacks from Coldcast, Menagerie, or from Hat, he is brought to his knees when Manchester attacks him with his telekinetic powers. With Superman groveling on his knees from the unbearable pain, Coldcast attacks him with a massive blast of electromagnetic energy, seemingly obliterating Superman. Moments later, the elite hears Superman's disconcerted voice, who claims that he has finally been convinced that he needs to start killing villains. Appearing as a blur in the background, Superman takes out the elite one by one. He first injects Menagerie with poison, forcing the beasts to escape her body. When Hat confidently confronts Superman with his magic, he suffocates him with a super-speed-generated whirlwind, creating a vacuum to remove the air. Against Coldcast's wishes, Manchester teleports them back to Metropolis, intent on using the civilians as cover. Regardless, Superman attacks Coldcast and seemingly throws him into orbit. With his team out of the way, a sinister-looking Superman appears before an increasingly desperate Manchester. He attacks Superman with a full blast of his powers, but it is ineffective against him. Superman then used his heat vision to lobotomize Manchester, stripping him of his powers. Believing his death to be seconds away, Manchester makes one final attempt to discredit Superman before everyone else. However, Superman reveals that his team is still alive and that he is committed to not killing anyone. He pretended to have turned to show the world the horror of using violence as a solution. He explains that the elite is safe back in his fortress, where they are stripped of their powers before being transported to a Supermax prison. Meanwhile, he orders the Superbots to save the people that may get caught up in their fight. He even revealed that Bunny agreed to cooperate when one of the Superbots promised to return her to her home dimension. Superman claims he will continue fighting until his dreams of a world of dignity, honor, and justice are realized. The people later realize that violence and killing are incompatible with the tenets of justice, and ultimately accept that Superman's methods are still in the best interests of all of mankind. Superman then flies off with Lois in his arms, and together they kiss. The end. Thank you so much for watching, and please check out these other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap the bell to be notified about our latest videos. See you soon.